Alex, you want to introduce our board maybe?
Yeah. So I don't think I got to meet Emil Sante last week. So if you could introduce yourself and just let us know what you do in town, where you work.
Mainly, I work for the Fire Protection District as a paramedic there. And ski patrol, I've been involved with that for about 25 years. And county coroner now for over 10 years as the coroner and 10 years as a deputy coroner.
And how about Miss Dr. Koelliker, if you could introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dr. Deanna Koelliker. I'm an emergency physician, and I'm the director of the emergency department at the Telluride Medical Center.
All right. And Mr. Covault?
Yeah, my name's Dan Covault. I'm Undersheriff with the San Miguel County Sheriff's Office. And between the Sheriff's Office and Mountain Village Police Department, I've been serving in this community for 21 years.
Sweet. And finally, Mr. Jones.
Sure, yeah, I'm Alex Jones. I am currently the high school counselor and department head for 11th and 12th grade. I also do clinical mental health therapy work here in the school.
Okay. And so what did you guys think of the movie? Even though we didn't get to finish it, there was a short afterward where all of his friends sort of leave like a final message. I don't know if you guys got to see it on your own time, but if you guys could just give your reaction from what you were able to see last week.
I'll go first, I guess. Yeah, I thought it hit home. I hope it hit home. It seemed very apropos to the message you guys are trying to get across regarding, you know, high school parties and homecoming, etc. But, you know, we do these things in hopes that it raises some degree of responsibility in the kids in the upper levels and hopefully keep somebody from making similar mistakes.
You know, I thought the film was very well done, and it really impressed on the viewer how Clay was not a bad kid. He was not an alcoholic. He wasn't, you know, a drug addict. And this was a horrible mistake that he made that had just irreversible results. And so I think it's really important, you know, he didn't know how dangerous it was to mix, you know, a sedative and alcohol, and neither did his friends. So I think it's so important to get that information out there so that our students understand how what a deadly combination that can be.
I thought it was really powerful to hear the perspective, you know, coming from his friends and from his family, and hearing their voices and how this, you know, event played out, what their thoughts were leading up to it and kind of after it. And yeah, I agree with Dr. Koelliker in that it was very apparent that no one knew the dangers at hand. And, you know, despite all their best efforts, this death really had a profound impact on everybody, and it was very sudden. And I think it's important for, you know, the viewer, who was the student body, to kind of see how, you know, how easy these two kind of substances can all of a sudden create a fatal consequence.
Yeah, and from the law enforcement standpoint, we agree with all of that. And it's very difficult for us when we go to these types of calls. You know, EMS is the first one on scene, but as soon as something suspicious comes up, then we're notified and we end up rolling on these things, or sometimes we're there first. And one experience that I had working in another jurisdiction was an overdose similar to this one. And the people there were literally distraught. They had no idea what was going on, no idea what they should or should not be doing. Half of them were in fear of getting in trouble. And I think what the kids need to understand is that as tragic as this incident was, and this one hit a little close to home because it actually took place in Colorado. This wasn't some faraway land. This was literally right on our doorstep, if you will. And I think the kids need to understand that from a law enforcement standpoint, the dangers involved with it, also coupled with the responsibilities that we want to be able to help and not to be afraid, and to be able to come forward and say, this is what's going on, this is what he took, this is how this came about, and not have that fear that someone's getting in trouble. Our first and foremost reason for being there is to save the life. And the more the kids understand that, and the more that they understand the mixing and drugs with alcohol is such a dangerous thing to do, that maybe as a community, they can put a little more trust in that we're there to help their friends.
Thank you. This is like great information from all of you guys. I love hearing from everybody, especially after watching the film. Our next questions are, how often do you see this in Telluride with people mixing drugs and alcohol? And do you feel like this is an issue for our own community?
Well, since I went last, I'll go first. It absolutely is an issue in this community, and it is only by the good graces that we have not found ourselves in a similar situation. As far as a death, we have had numerous teenage overdoses over the years that almost always incorporate alcohol with either illicit or prescription drugs, and we are not immune from that. It's a nationwide issue, and we see it here as well.
Definitely, I'll back up what Dan says. I have seen it, hundreds of times, not all in 19-year-olds, but in people who, mix alcohol and other substances. And like Dan said, luckily, we have not had a death directly related to that. But Emil can talk about, we've had over the years, while I've been here, a number of deaths that not in a teenager, but that are polysubstance overdoses, and most of them are accidental. They are not intending to hurt themselves, and unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of times somebody finds them before they have died, and then we can intervene. But we have seen this way too often.
Yeah, from the EMS side of things, it's honestly, it's probably only a handful of times every year that we have somebody who's either accidentally or intentionally gone too far like this. And like Deanna said, it's usually the accidental ones that end up becoming fatal. And, we're a small county, so we don't see a lot of it, but we do see 1 or 2 cases on average every year. Yeah, we're lucky that it's an infrequent thing for our Jew community. I'm thankful for that.
All right. And so what do you guys think we should do if we see someone mixing prescription drugs with alcohol? Like maybe Dr. Koelliker could give us some guidance.
You all are our best shot of counteracting this, because you will see this or hear about this before any of us, parents or healthcare providers or law enforcement or teachers. You all are our first line of defense, and so that's why I think this film was so informative, is to give you that information and arm you with the fact that no, you should never mix Xanax and alcohol. And that goes for other prescription drugs. There was a little trend a few years ago that people would go to a party and they would mix whatever prescription drugs were in the house, or people would bring them, and then they would take whatever was in there. And I certainly was one that took care of some of those young people. You know, this is nothing to be played with. And they can look like they're okay, and an hour later you've put them to bed, and they can stop breathing. So that's certainly, if you hear of anything, you definitely want to you know, step in and call a responsible adult, whether it's one of your parents or whether it is me, or 911. Call Emil and Dan. In all my years here, I have never had a kid end up going to jail or getting an MIP for when somebody, you know, reported it to either 911 or to law enforcement or to a parent. We are only interested in making sure that, you know, you all are okay. We just want to treat you and you know, take care of you, and nobody here is interested in you getting in trouble.
Yeah,
I'd
kind of
like
in the
to-
same. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to add to that, and just in case the student body does not know this, there are laws to protect you. If you're the person calling 911, or you're the person driving your friend to the clinic or whatever the case may be, there's actual laws in Colorado that protect you as that person, no matter what it was that you were doing. If you're the one seeking that help, you are provided protection under the law.
Yeah, and I think that's so good to highlight, because I think so many people are concerned about the trouble they could get into as teenagers, but in the end, there's protection so that you do head toward help. I felt this video was really important to show to everyone, because just the educational aspect of understanding this story and then kind of thinking about how this relates to maybe decisions that your classmates are making or other students are making, so that on the front end, there's hopefully a little bit of prevention effort that people will steer each other away. You know, peers will still steer other peers away from using prescription medications outside what's simply written on the bottle. And most of the time it says on the bottle, you know, you should not be mixing this with alcohol. And that's absolutely why, because it could have a toxic result that ends up, you know, cutting someone's life short. And we hope that also, you know, in the event that you're worried about a friend, you could use something like Safe to Tells to get people involved, where you anonymously give information about a concern you have with a student mixing these drugs, or maybe an event that's coming up where these drugs may be mixed. And then in the intervention phase, if you end up with somebody who seems like they're intoxicated and may have mixed pills or something, you feel, you know, empowered to contact anybody, you know, to help, whether that's an adult or always under the safety of a 911 call.
And so you said that, Mr. Kovault, you said there were laws that protect you from getting in trouble if you ever, like, you know, have to like take someone, or if you need help. Are there like any consequences to calling 911?
Well, I guess that would be a matter of perspective. Is that person going to get in trouble? No. Would that person maybe have to fill out a witness statement or something as to what took place? That's a possibility. So if you want to consider being interviewed a consequence, then there could be a consequence. But a consequence of being in trouble, highly, highly unlikely, because the laws are there to protect the Good Samaritan seeking help.
All right.
So a big part of this is knowing if a friend is in trouble, or if we should call 911 or anybody. How do we know if someone's reached that point where we should call law enforcement or the medical center?
So that's a great point. I think there are some things that you can see that give you a hint that somebody is in trouble. And then there are just some behaviors that, even though they look okay, that they still could be in trouble. So if someone can't walk, they can't sit up, they can't stop vomiting, if they're not coherent, those are all visible things that you all could see and say, this person is in trouble. And a person can look okay if they've taken either a lot of alcohol in a short period of time, like 10 shots. Nobody can sustain 10 shots of liquor without having an adverse effect. And combining alcohol with drugs, and that includes prescription drugs, like in the video, Xanax or Valium or antidepressants. So, some medications that you might be prescribed, as well as like ADHD medications and even over-the-counter medications. So that could include cold medicine or, a bottle of cough syrup or something like that. So even if a person looks okay, but that they have taken, a large amount of alcohol or combined alcohol with something else, those are all reasons that you want to reach out. Emil, you got anything else to add to that?
One of the unfortunate things that I've seen quite a few times is someone who maybe has been a habitual user in the past and has been in a rehab program, or have been away and not taking what they usually take, and have had a 6-month or more sobriety span. And then they come back to it and they get right back in at the same levels that they had experienced before they had their sobriety, and their body's tolerance isn't there to handle it, and they go downhill, in a terminal way. So
that's a really good point, for sure. And
Great.
really any narcotics, so opiates, pain pills, anything and we don't see it very often, but heroin and, Dilaudid, fentanyl, and any of those mixed with alcohol can have fatal effects. And here's the other thing, a lot of drugs that you might take, you don't know necessarily what's in there. So there's been lots of, combinations of somebody thinks that they're doing some ecstasy, and that's actually not, what's in that. Or it's cut with fentanyl, which is a very potent opiate and can, stop your breathing. So a lot of street drugs, you actually don't know what exactly you're getting into.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much. Do you want to ask the last one, Alex?
Sure. So, well, I have a little follow-up question. Like, obviously kids don't just pick up drugs they find like on the road, but is there like any way of telling if something is safe to take?
Look, anything you're putting in your body ought to be researched. And I can't tell you how many times a prescription drug, let's just say OxyContin, for instance, or some other opiate, has been labeled correctly by the physician. It's been prescribed or whatever. And then that's actually not the drug that ends up being in that bottle, So you may think you're taking something, but again, unless you've researched exactly what it is, you're rolling the dice.
All right.
My recommendation is if your doctor didn't give it to you, you don't take it.
And so, what do you guys think that as a community, I'm pretty sure, like probably a few of you, I don't know if all of you are like parents or anything, but as parents, as educators or as health professionals, is there anything you guys would recommend we do to kind of prevent this from happening to our students, and just something you suggest to other students as well?
I think one of the most important things is for you all to help each other. We kind of come back to that idea that, if you see this is going on, or students start talking about it, to get engaged in those conversations, or whether they're your friends or not, and and kind of steer them in the right direction. It's foolish of me as a high school counselor to think that all drug use and all alcohol use will come to a stop if I work really hard. But instead, we got to think of this model that we want to reduce the risk of you all, getting injured or having negative consequences, that such as death, or doing things you regret, or serious injuries. And ultimately, this is a situation with this idea that if you're going to be using substances, please don't mix them, and please stay away from prescription medication that's not being taken for what it's meant to do, which is to heal you or to relieve pain, or these wonderful things that if you then throw in other substances, it just has this toxic effect. So I think really it's about you all helping each other reduce the risk of negative outcomes.
And my recommendation would be to ask for help. It is always best to be on the conservative side, and everything that I've said thus far is me as an emergency physician. But me as a parent, I will say that if my kid calls me and asks for help, I am always going to be on his side and making sure that him and his friends are okay. And I am not going to be thinking of repercussions of them asking for help. I just want to encourage you. We have lots of resources in this town that you can reach out and ask for help for either you or one of your friends. And, let's just not let something senseless like what happened to Clay happen in our community.
I agree with both those sentiments.
All right.
Okay, does anybody want to add anything else? It's almost 5:30, so if anybody has final thoughts, you guys can go ahead and share them, or else I'm going to thank you guys all for your time.
I want to thank Lulu and Alex for taking this on and making this something that you bring to your classmates. I'm super impressed with y'all. So thanks for following through, and I really appreciate your role in all of this.
Thanks. We appreciate you guys so much. You guys, this is really helpful for our students and for us to share with our own friends and teachers. I hope this can help reduce or prevent anything from this happening in our community.
Look after each other.
So this is about all the time we have. Thank you guys for coming. It was, I think it was a really productive conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't get to talk about this last week. We were cut pretty short, but the Google Forms are still open if any students have any questions. So, we're gonna reach out to Mr. Jones and Mrs. White, and you guys, hopefully, if you're up to it. But if students have any questions, we'll get those answered. And so also, I think it was this Wednesday at 6 o'clock, there's gonna be we have a speaker coming in. Her name is Cindy Pierce, and she's gonna talk about, party culture and hookup culture. And so hopefully we can learn something to help our community at this Wednesday night. So